Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Fairchild. I'll be sharing some information with you for about a half hour. Our internet website can help us. If those of you with questions will please email your comments to us from the email link on the website at rockprophecy.com. Several months back there was an article in a magazine called USA Weekend where a network talk show host named Chris Matthews said, if you're going to hold people's attention, you better make it fun. The article was about how media trains us to blur politics with entertainment and reduce discussions to goof humor. In the article, a congressman named David Dreyer was quoted saying, you have to be able to communicate, and to be effective you have to do it in a comedic way. But we're here so that the affluent class and their managers can't order us to cheerfulize our attitudes. Our rulers use media to train us to expect punchlines with discussions because chasing laughs diverts us from focusing on the situation we're all in. Comedy has a way of undermining the unfunny actions we need to take. So unless there are laughs attached to what I'm saying here, some will be ready to reject what's said. But some of us are determined not to be diverted. So before we start, I'll declare the next half hour to be comedy-free. We're here to deprogram the spell that media has cast over us, and we can handle it because without media's frame, we'll see some interesting things. But if you feel the need for goof humor, please save it for later, or if you get comedy out of what's said, it's unintended. Okay, Jimi Hendrix died in 1970, and a couple of years after his death, his father signed contracts to set up a production company in Hollywood, California. The company was called Are You Experienced? And for more than 20 years that company released dozens of Hendrix albums from recordings Jimi had stockpiled before he died. For 7 years, up until 1996, I was trained to be the next director of the Hendrix Company. I worked as the company's full-time writer, researcher, consultant, and speaker. And while doing this, I learned that the co-founder of Microsoft, a billionaire named Paul Allen, was planning to build a museum for Hendrix in Jimi's hometown of Seattle, the same city where Paul Allen and Microsoft are from. This was back in 1992, when few people you met knew what Microsoft was. Anyway, the museum that Paul Allen was building is now known as the Experience Music Project, and they were first notified by me about some world-class collections of Jimi Hendrix items. In May of 1992, I began a 6-month effort to make possible the museum's purchase of these collections. My work and my vision resulted in Paul Allen's museum obtaining thousands of rare Hendrix items for nearly $500,000. Soon afterwards, Paul Allen began to seek ownership of the rights to Jimi's music. He wanted to control the Hendrix legacy, but I was the one slated to be the next director of the company. So in 1993, Paul Allen made available $5 million to Jimi's father, Al Hendrix here, to launch a lawsuit against the people in the company to whom Jimi's father had sold rights to market Hendrix music. Backed by the Microsoft billionaire's money, Jimi's father was now seeking to get out of his contract with the people he had hired to produce Hendrix records by claiming that he didn't understand the contract when he signed it. It was a classic harassment lawsuit. It was instigated by an unjust moneyed brat, in this case Paul Allen. The so-called rich, it seems to me, they need only manufacture a pretext to drag people they don't like into court and force us to pay legal fees. In 1995, this bogus lawsuit was settled out of court. As a result of the settlement, the Hendrix Company that employed me as a writer and researcher was bought out and closed. Notice I said that company was bought out in a settlement. For the past 8 or more years, we've heard the people who now run the company say, oh, we won the lawsuit, and the media repeats, oh, they won the lawsuit. At the time, I was told by the people involved that those who now run the company had to pay tens of millions of dollars to several parties each to buy their way out of a legally binding contract. Now, to me, that does not sound like winning a lawsuit. Anyway, for 7 years I was trained to be the director of the company, and then the lawsuit filed by Jimi's father and financed by Paul Allen's money toppled my opportunity. The job of director was instead given to Al Hendrix's adopted daughter, a Japanese-American woman named Jane Reynolds, who is no blood relative of Jimi. She had met Hendrix just a very few times when she was a very small kid. Now, even though I had a great deal to do with the success of Hendrix releases in the 1990s, my job was given to Jane and I was left unemployed. And then officials at Paul Allen's Hendrix Museum told me that I won't be paid for all of the work that I'd done to help build that Hendrix collection for Paul Allen's museum. And then Jane, the Japanese-American woman who never did a thing for the company while I was there, but who got my job, she began taking all of my writings included with Jimi's CDs off the market, and then she began replacing them all with like really uninteresting junk. I mean, she went out of her way to make sure my name was removed from all of the Hendrix products for which I'd worked so much to make successful. Now, the irony is that I was the main conceptualist for the Hendrix Company, responsible for ideas that pushed new releases of Jimi's music into the top 10 and even the top 5 on Billboard charts. Hendrix fans bought those CDs for the music, but I knew how to package and present the music in ways that drove those CDs up the charts. We won't see that again. For the highest charting Hendrix releases in the past 30 years, I selected most of the songs used and programmed their playing order. They carried my booklet stories, and many of those CDs were titled by me too. But despite these and other successes, my career at the Hendrix Company was ruined by the Microsoft lawsuit. And worse, the media coverage given to Jimi while I was making the decisions has disappeared. It's as if the purpose or the result of Paul Allen's lawsuit money is to once again marginalize Hendrix outside of public awareness. In recent years, we've seen a pathetic decline in interest in Hendrix releases. Never again will we see a Jimi CD rise high in the charts as they had while I was helping to orchestrate their success. The subsequent releases have been so bad that dominators have triumphed in the total removal of Hendrix, light years away from any public concern at all. Now, the way that I was treated by these Seattle dominators is an example of a much larger story that's described in my book titled Rock Prophecy. My experience with Paul Allen's museum and the Hendrix clan are cited here as examples of what I call the silencing of the seers and the retarding of history. It's an interpretation of society described in Rock Prophecy. Now, as a writer, I achieved the most visibility of the Hendrix experts. My writings included with Jimi's CDs were distributed to well over 6 million people. None of the dozens of books written about Hendrix reached such circulation. That's why I'm the most widely read of the Hendrix scholars. Since my exile from the company, none of the releases they put out have scraped even the bottom of the barrel on the charts. None of the writers for those CDs got much circulation. When I landed the job of writing the first booklet stories for the Hendrix CDs in the 1990s, to me it was a lot like winning the Olympics of rock journalism. The competition was intense because the stakes were so high. No one had succeeded in explaining how the issues and connections surrounding the life of Hendrix are the most explosive controversies at the center of our culture. All of society's hot-button issues are triggered in unexpected ways, in ways concealed from us by media elites who prevent any attempt to publish or air the real story. I became the target of intense resentment from jealous writers and collectors and fans because of my writings, but especially because I was to be the next director of the company. It was my goal to climb the ladder of the estate and advance the truth about Jimi to a worldwide audience. After 7 years of amazing successes running a non-stop obstacle course, I knew I was ready for the director's job. I could perform better than anyone, but caught in the crossfire of the Hendrix Microsoft lawsuit was me, the only one who understood the vision and the prophecy Jimi was fighting to communicate. In the summer of 1995, I was writing the book Rock Prophecy when a settlement was reached for this lawsuit. The Hendrix Company in Hollywood was closed and I was unemployed. The people I worked for, making successes for the company with my writings and consulting, they all received multi-million-dollar settlements, but I didn't even get severance pay. And then officials at Paul Allen's